So in refurbing the underside of this E30, I've now finally moved round to the back where we find the typical E30 battery box rot. It's not actually a battery box for this car because it's a 316, but it's where the battery is in the 6-cylinder cars. So it's just an empty box really. The rot on this one, although it looks pretty ugly from the outside, it's actually nowhere near as bad as some of them I've seen. Hopefully it's quite an easy fix. My plans are to cut all the rot out with an angle grinder and weld in replacement sheet metal to patch over it, integrate that with the rear valence, and hopefully it'll look nice and OE. My welds leave a lot to be desired, but I'm learning as I go, so stick with me. Right, so let's start by wire brushing the area, seeing what we've got to work with, and then I'll know where to cut. Before I start brushing from the outside, I thought it'd probably wise to just show you what it looks like from the inside. You can see that the large hole there. It looks like someone's been in here before and wedged a load of seam sealer in, probably to stop the growing of that hole, but alas, they've failed, and here I am now fixing it properly, hopefully. The reason this is such a common rust spot on an E30 is quite obvious really. Simply, water gets into the boot one way or another, ends up sitting down in these box areas on either side, and it just sits there and eats away over years. The main reason the water gets in the first place is the sunroof vents and things like that end up blocked. And of course the sunroof drain is here and exits out here behind the wheel arch. And what happens is some of that water ends up in here inevitably and it rots out. It's only held in by seam sealer, that now. Right, that bit should wiggle out now as well. Right, so now I've cut out all the rot as neatly as I can. It's come away in 2 pieces, which I'll show you when we go to make our patch. Before I head over there to do that, I'm first going to see if I can get rid of some of this thick seam sealer, which is going to get completely in our way when we come to weld. So my method for that is heat it up very hot with a heat gun and pick away with it with a screwdriver and some pliers, and hopefully it'll come off in big strips and it'll be nice and easy. Right, so that's the seam sealer cleared away from around the area I'm going to be welding. You'll notice the hole's grown a bit. I found a little rust hole which I decided to notch out and fix whilst I'm here. Right, I think it's about time we got those patches made up ready to weld in. So these are the bits I've cut from the car. Obviously it's going to be very difficult to use these as a template to make a repair patch. So what I've done is I've quite crudely folded up a piece of paper, held it up to the car to see if I can get a rough fit. It's a bit bigger than I think I need, so I've got a bit of room to trim down. It's going to be trial and error this. So I'm going to cut my shape out of this 1.2mm steel, and then I'll get to bending it and trying to get it to fit up. Right, so I've held my piece up, I've cut it a bit wonky, but I also cut this a bit wonky, so happy accident really. So what I'm doing just to improve the fit of this is I've put a piece of masking tape over the actual hole, and I'm going to just trace around it with a pencil, and I'm going to stick that masking tape onto this so that I can actually match up the edge perfectly. Once I've done that, and I've cut this to that shape, this should then fit into this gap perfectly, and the only thing I need to worry about will be the bottom side of it and bending it round. Right, so I've got a patch that fits fairly well now. The only problem I've got is there's going to be this gap here. So what I need to do is weld something into for this to sit on. Otherwise, I'll have a hole through here and it'll rust out again very quickly. But so far so good. Let's make that second piece. Right, so I've cut this piece now and got it fitted up. This is what I'm going to use to close off that box when the other piece is actually welded on. I'm going to do a plug weld and also weld around the edge just to make sure it's really solid and well sealed. Let's start by welding this in, and then I can worry about putting the main piece on. Right, after quite a bit more fiddling about, I think I've now got this patch fairly well in place. I've put a couple of handy little magnets on that are just holding it in its position. Next thing to do is put a couple of tacks on and then see how we're doing. The fitment isn't the best, but it's definitely my best. So let's see how we go. Run out of wire. Right, let's give it a break to cool down for a bit. Right, there's no more holes. I even managed to weld up that little hole I blew through there. So we're doing very well really. Once that's all ground down, it should be nice and smooth. Next thing to do is look from the other side, the inside, see what we need to do there to connect it up to the base of the battery box. So this is what we're dealing with from the underside. There's a gap here. I can just about fit my fingernail in there. So I need to get that closed up and welded shut. Should be a perfect fit, I think. Right, I've come up with a cunning plan. I'm using a jack and a long piece of wood to apply pressure to the plate, which will close the gap for me. Quite pleased with that. As you can see from this side, I give a quick pump of the jack. There you go, gap closed, ready to weld. Well, it's been bloody hard work, but I'm over the moon with the result, to be honest. It's beyond what I thought I could do, which is fantastic. It gives me loads of confidence to crack on with the rest of this, because I have a very rusty wheel arch to deal with yet. I think the most difficult part of the job is actually cutting an accurate patch and getting it to fit up nicely. The welding itself, once you've got it set up correctly, you're away really. To give it the OE look, of course, it'd need the textured underseal paint that BMW put on from factory. But I'm actually intending to put a kit on this car anyway, so I'm not going to worry about that for now. Now I've got some momentum going with the project, there's a lot more to come with it, so give us a subscribe and follow along with the project. If you've got any good tips on how to improve my welding even further, let me know in the comments.
Thank you.